Jonathan Ashford adjusted his tie for the third time as he waited in the private dining room of the Meridian, one of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants. At 32, he had built Ashford Technologies from a college dorm room idea into an $80 million empire. He had addressed conferences, negotiated with Fortune 500 companies, and revolutionized cybersecurity protocols used by governments worldwide. But sitting here waiting for a woman he had never met, he felt like a nervous teenager. His business partner, Gavin Morrison, had insisted on arranging this date. "Valerie Hayes is perfect for you," Gavin had said repeatedly. "Harvard Law, partner at her firm by 30. Brilliant mind. She is exactly the kind of woman you need." What Gavin meant, Jonathan knew, was that Valerie was the kind of woman who might overlook the wheelchair. The thought made Jonathan's jaw tighten. He'd been paralyzed from the waist down for 7 years now, since a diving accident during a vacation in Costa Rica had changed everything. He had learned to navigate his new reality, to build a life that was full and meaningful despite the limitations. But dating remained complicated in ways that had nothing to do with accessibility. The door opened. Jonathan straightened instinctively. Valerie Hayes walked in, and he could see immediately why Gavin had been so enthusiastic. She was striking, with sharp features, perfectly styled auburn hair, and a charcoal designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her confidence filled the room as she scanned the space with calculating eyes. Then those eyes landed on his wheelchair, and Jonathan saw the exact moment everything changed. Her professional smile froze. Her steps faltered. The warmth drained from her expression, replaced by something between shock and poorly concealed disgust. "Jonathan?" she asked, her voice climbing half an octave. "That is me," Jonathan replied, extending his hand with practiced ease. "Valerie, I presume. It is a pleasure to meet you." She stared at his hand for a long, uncomfortable moment before giving it the briefest possible shake, as if afraid prolonged contact might somehow transfer his condition to her. She sat down across from him, but Jonathan noticed how she positioned her chair slightly farther from the table than necessary, maintaining maximum distance. "Gavin didn't mention that you..." Valerie began, gesturing vaguely toward his wheelchair. "Use a wheelchair," Jonathan finished for her, keeping his tone neutral. No, he probably thought it would not matter. Apparently, he was optimistic. "It is just surprising," Valerie said quickly, too quickly. "That is all." The waiter arrived to take their orders, providing a brief respite from the tension. Jonathan ordered the restaurant's signature salmon. Valerie requested a salad, her voice clipped and distracted. As soon as the waiter left, the awkward silence returned, heavier than before. Jonathan tried to engage her in conversation, asking about her work at the law firm, her recent cases, her interests outside the office. Valerie answered in monosyllables, checking her phone constantly, her body language screaming her desire to be anywhere else. Every question Jonathan asked was met with minimal response. Every attempt at humor fell flat. 20 excruciating minutes passed. Then Valerie set down her water glass with more force than necessary and leaned forward. "Look," she said, her voice low but not quite low enough. "I appreciate that Gavin thought this was a good idea, but let us be honest here. I have a certain image to maintain. I attend galas, charity functions, corporate events. I need a partner who can stand beside me at those events. Someone who fits the lifestyle." Jonathan felt the familiar burn of humiliation in his chest, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. "I see. And someone in a wheelchair does not fit that image." "It is not personal," Valerie continued, as if that made it better. "It is just practical. I mean, think about it. The logistics alone would be complicated. And people would stare. They would ask questions. I did not work this hard to build my reputation just to become known as the woman who dates the guy in the wheelchair. It would be a distraction for my career." Nearby tables had begun to notice the rising tension. Jonathan could feel eyes turning toward them, curiosity and pity in equal measure. He wanted to disappear, to wheel himself out of this restaurant and never look back. But pride kept him seated, kept his spine straight despite the crushing weight of her words. "So what you are saying," Jonathan said quietly, "is that my disability makes me unworthy of being seen with you in public." "I am saying I have standards," Valerie replied, standing abruptly and gathering her designer purse. "And I am sorry, but you do not meet them. I am sure there is someone out there who would be willing to take on a project like you, but I am not interested in being anyone's nurse or charity case." She said the last words loudly enough that several nearby diners openly turned to stare. Jonathan felt his face burning, humiliation washing over him in waves. He had experienced discrimination before, had dealt with thoughtless comments and architectural barriers and patronizing attitudes. But this public rejection, this casual cruelty delivered in a room full of witnesses, cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Valerie walked out without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Jonathan sat frozen at the table, acutely aware of every eye on him, every whispered comment. The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly unsure what to do. "Sir, I am so sorry. Would you like me to cancel the orders?" "No," Jonathan said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "Just bring me the wine list. The expensive one." The waiter hurried away. Jonathan closed his eyes and tried to steady his breathing. This was why he avoided dating. This was why he threw himself into work, surrounded himself with the familiar safety of code and algorithms and business deals that did not care about his physical limitations. Every time he tried to let someone in, every time he hoped things might be different, reality came crashing back with painful clarity. "Excuse me," a soft voice said beside him. Jonathan opened his eyes to find a young woman standing next to his table. She wore the black and white uniform of the Meridian's waitstaff, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. But what struck him most were her eyes, deep brown and currently blazing with barely contained fury. "Yes," Jonathan managed. "I am Elena," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "And I need you to know that woman who just left is the most horrible person I have ever seen walk through these doors. I have worked here for 3 years, so that is saying something." Jonathan blinked, surprised out of his misery. "Thank you, but you do not have to." "Yes, I do." Elena interrupted, glancing around quickly before pulling out the chair Valerie had vacated and sitting down. "Because what just happened was wrong. Completely, absolutely wrong. And you deserve to know that not everyone in this world is blind, stupid, or soulless." "I appreciate the sentiment," Jonathan said, "but your manager is going to notice you sitting with a customer." "Let him notice," Elena said with a fierce determination that made Jonathan's lips twitch despite everything. "Some things are more important than following arbitrary rules. And right now, making sure you do not leave here thinking you deserve that treatment is more important than my job." "You could really get fired for this," Jonathan warned. "Then I will get fired for doing the right thing," Elena replied. "Now, you ordered the salmon, correct? When it arrives, I am going to share this table with you and have a proper conversation. Because that woman did not deserve even 1 minute of your time, and you deserve to finish your evening with someone who has the basic decency to see you as a human being." For the first time since Valerie had walked in, Jonathan felt something other than humiliation. He felt seen. Not pitted, not patronized, but genuinely seen by someone who had just put her livelihood on the line to defend a complete stranger. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. Elena's fierce expression softened into something gentler. "Because my little sister Sophie has cerebral palsy. I have spent my entire life watching people treat her like she is less than human because of her physical challenges. And I will never, ever stand by and watch someone be dehumanized like that. Not on my watch. Not ever." Jonathan felt an unfamiliar tightness in his throat. "Your sister is lucky to have you." "I am lucky to have her," Elena corrected. "She taught me what really matters in this world. And it is not designer clothes or corporate ladders or maintaining some perfect image. It is kindness, empathy, and having the courage to stand up for what is right." The manager of the Meridian approached their table, his expression stern. "Miss Clark, what are you doing?" Elena looked up at him without flinching. "I am finishing a conversation, Mr. Peterson. I will be back to work in a moment." "This is highly inappropriate," Mr. Peterson said. "So is what happened here tonight," Elena replied firmly. "And I chose to address that inappropriateness rather than ignore it. If that costs me my job, then so be it." Mr. Peterson looked between Elena and Jonathan, clearly torn between enforcing restaurant policy and avoiding a scene. Finally, he sighed. "The gentleman has not complained. I will give you 10 minutes, Miss Clark, and I expect you back at your station." As Mr. Peterson walked away, Elena turned back to Jonathan with a small smile. "So, Jonathan, tell me about yourself. And I do not want to hear about your company or your business achievements. Tell me about you. What do you do when you are not building empires?" What makes you laugh? What is your favorite completely ridiculous guilty pleasure? And despite everything, despite the humiliation still burning in his chest and the stares still coming from nearby tables, Jonathan found himself smiling. Because this strange, fierce young woman had just given him something he had not experienced in a very long time. She had given him hope. The 10 minutes Mr. Peterson had granted turned into 20. Then 30. Jonathan found himself talking to Elena Clark in a way he had not talked to anyone in years. She asked him about his love for vintage jazz music, about the mystery novels he secretly devoured at 2 in the morning, about his failed attempts at learning to play the saxophone. In return, she told him about her dreams of opening her own bistro, about her sister Sophie's infectious laugh, about how she had once accidentally set a kitchen on fire trying to make creme brulee. When Elena finally had to return to work, Jonathan found himself reluctant to let the conversation end. He paid his bill and added a generous tip. But before leaving, he wrote his phone number on the back of his business card. "If you would like to continue this conversation sometime," he said, handing it to her, "I would really enjoy that. Maybe over coffee, or dinner at a place where you do not have to work." Elena took the card, her smile genuine and warm. "I would love that. How about Sunday? It is my day off." "Sunday is perfect," Jonathan said, feeling lighter than he had in months. Over the following 3 weeks, Jonathan and Elena saw each other whenever their schedules allowed. Elena worked long hours at the Meridian, often pulling double shifts to help cover her sister's medical expenses and save toward her dream of culinary school. Jonathan's schedule was equally demanding, with Ashford Technologies in the middle of expanding into the European market. But they made time, stealing hours here and there, building something neither had expected to find. Jonathan learned that Elena was 28, that she had been essentially raising Sophie since their mother died 5 years ago from cancer. Their father had left when Elena was 12, unable to handle the demands of caring for a child with cerebral palsy. Elena had worked multiple jobs since she was 16, putting herself through community college while caring for Sophie, who is now 23 and living in a supported living facility that Elena visited every day. "She is the strongest person I know," Elena told him during a walk through Millennium Park, Jonathan navigating the paths easily in his chair while Elena walked beside him. "People look at her and see limitations, but Sophie sees possibilities everywhere. She taught me that disabilities do not define people. Lack of compassion does." Jonathan in turn opened up about his own struggles in ways he rarely did with anyone. He told her about the depression that had consumed him after the accident, about the physical therapy that had been agonizing, about the moment he realized he could either let the wheelchair define him or define himself despite it. "My family struggled with it," he admitted. "They love me, but they started treating me like I was fragile, like I might break. My mother especially. She became overprotective to the point of suffocation. My brother Pierce took over parts of the company. He thought I could not handle anymore, even though my mind works perfectly fine. It took me years to reclaim my authority, to make them see I was still capable." "Are they better now?" Elena asked. Jonathan's expression darkened. "They are better at hiding their doubt, but it is still there. They still think I need managing. Still think my personal life requires their intervention." He did not tell her that his family would likely disapprove of their relationship, though he suspected Elena knew. The differences in their backgrounds were obvious, impossible to ignore. Jonathan lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Elena shared a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood with a rotating cast of roommates to help split the rent. His world was corporate deals and investment portfolios. Hers was double shifts and carefully budgeted groceries. But when they were together, none of that seemed to matter. Their first official date was at Jonathan's penthouse. He had insisted on cooking for her, wanting to show her that he was capable and independent in his own space. Elena arrived wearing a simple navy dress, her usual ponytail replaced by loose waves, and Jonathan felt his breath catch. "Welcome to my home," he said, gesturing around the open-plan space. Everything was designed for accessibility, but also for beauty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered stunning views of the city. Art pieces he had collected over the years adorned the walls. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes on everything from computer science to philosophy. "Jonathan, this is beautiful," Elena said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "The kitchen is this way," he said, leading her through. "I hope you are hungry. I am making risotto, and I will be offended if you do not eat at least 2 servings." Elena laughed, the sound filling his home with warmth. I would never insult a chef's risotto. That is a sacred rule. They cooked together, Jonathan handling the risotto while Elena prepared a salad and garlic bread. They moved around each other with surprising ease, falling into a natural rhythm. Jonathan told her about learning to cook after the accident, how it had become a form of therapy, a way to prove to himself that he could still create, still nurture, still provide. My mother wanted to hire a full-time chef for me, he said, stirring the rice slowly. She could not understand why I insisted on cooking for myself. But it mattered. It still matters. This is my space, my domain, where I am completely in control. I understand that, Elena said softly. Food has always been my way of showing love. When Sophie was having a hard day, I would make her favorite cookies. When my mother was sick, I would cook elaborate meals just to see her smile. Cooking is not just sustenance. It is connection. Dinner was perfect. They ate at Jonathan's table overlooking the twinkling lights of Chicago, talking about everything and nothing. Jonathan felt something he had not felt in years. Completely comfortable, completely accepted, completely seen. After dinner, they moved to the couch. Jonathan poured wine and they continued talking as the city lights sparkled below them. At some point, Elena's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. I need to tell you something, Jonathan said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I am falling for you, Elena. Fast and hard and in a way that terrifies me. Because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too complicated, or I am too much work, or that being with me comes with challenges you did not sign up for. Elena shifted closer, her brown eyes intense. Jonathan Ashford, listen to me very carefully. You are not too much work. You are not a burden. You are brilliant and kind and funny and talented. Yes, you use a wheelchair. So what? That is just one aspect of who you are. It does not define you, and it certainly does not make me want you any less. And my family is going to be difficult, Jonathan warned. They have opinions about everything, including who I should date. And when they find out about us, then we will handle it, Elena said firmly. Together. I am not afraid of difficult families or complicated situations. Jonathan, I am only afraid of walking away from something real because it might be hard. And this feels real to me. Does it feel real to you? More real than anything I have ever experienced, Jonathan admitted. Elena leaned in and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. So we are doing this? Elena asked. Officially. We are definitely doing this, Jonathan confirmed. You and me against whatever comes next. What came next arrived sooner than either of them expected. 2 days later, Jonathan received a call from Gavin Morrison. We need to talk, Gavin said, his tone serious. In person. Can you come to the office? At Ashford Technologies headquarters, Gavin was waiting in the conference room with Timothy Brennan, their lead investor and board member. Jonathan, sit down, Timothy said, gesturing to a chair. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Jonathan asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach. Gavin cleared his throat uncomfortably. There are photos circulating. You and Elena Clark. At that restaurant, at various places around Chicago, at your penthouse. Someone has been following you. Following me. Jonathan's voice hardened. Why? Because Westbrook International wants to invest $100 million into Ashford Technologies, Timothy explained. They are our ticket to massive expansion. But their CEO, Harrison Westbrook, is old-fashioned about certain things. He believes company leaders should present a certain image, and he has expressed concerns about your relationship with a waitress. Jonathan felt fury building in his chest. My personal life is not his concern. It becomes his concern when it affects his investment, Gavin said carefully. Harrison Westbrook comes from old money, old values. He is worried about optics, about how it looks for a CEO to be dating someone so far outside his social circle. He thinks it shows poor judgment. Poor judgment, Jonathan repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Dating a hard-working, compassionate woman who supports her disabled sister shows poor judgment. I am just telling you what he said, Gavin replied. He is willing to make the investment if you end the relationship. Otherwise, the deal is off. Timothy leaned forward. Jonathan, this is $100 million. That is the kind of capital that could transform this company, that could secure everyone's future here. We are talking about hundreds of jobs, expansion into 6 new countries, partnerships that could make Ashford Technologies a global household name. And all I have to do is break up with Elena, Jonathan said flatly. It is a business decision, Timothy said, not a personal one. Jonathan looked between the two men, these people he had worked with for years, and saw the expectation in their eyes. They genuinely believed he would choose the money. They thought this was an easy calculation. No, Jonathan said simply. Gavin blinked. No. No, Jonathan repeated more firmly. I will not end my relationship with Elena for Harrison Westbrook or his money or anyone else. If Westbrook cannot see past his outdated prejudices, then he is not someone I want as a partner anyway. Jonathan, be reasonable, Timothy started. I am being reasonable, Jonathan interrupted. I am being reasonable about what actually matters in life. Elena showed me kindness when I was at my lowest. She sees me as a complete person, not as a disability or a bank account. She challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better. And you are asking me to throw that away for money? No, absolutely not. This is $100 million, Gavin said, as if Jonathan had not understood the amount. I heard you the first time, Jonathan replied. And my answer is still no. Tell Westbrook his investment is not welcome. I will find other investors, people who care more about innovation than social climbing, people who understand that a CEO's worth is not measured by who he dates. Timothy stood abruptly. You are making a mistake. Then it is my mistake to make, Jonathan said. This is my company, built on my ideas, my work, my vision, and I am not going to compromise my values or my happiness for anyone's investment. If that costs me business partners, so be it. After they left, Jonathan sat alone in the conference room, his hand shaking slightly. He had just walked away from a fortune, potentially damaged his company's growth trajectory, all for a relationship that was barely a month old. Some would call that foolish. But as he pulled out his phone and called Elena, hearing her voice wash over him like a balm, Jonathan knew he had made the right choice. Because money could be earned and lost and earned again. But finding someone who saw your worth, who valued you for who you truly were, that was priceless. Elena, he said when she answered, are you free tonight? I need to see you. I have something important to tell you. Is everything okay? She asked, concern in her voice. Everything is perfect, Jonathan said, surprising himself with the truth of it. I just realized what really matters, and I want to share that with you. That evening, Jonathan told Elena everything about the investment offer, about Westbrook's conditions, about his decision to walk away. He expected her to be upset, maybe even angry that he had risked so much for their relationship. Instead, Elena burst into tears. You chose me, she whispered, her voice breaking. You chose us over $100 million. I would choose you over any amount of money, Jonathan said, pulling her close. Because you are worth more than any investment, any business deal, any expansion plan. You are real, Elena. What we have is real. And I am not going to let anyone take that away from us. Elena kissed him then, deep and passionate, pouring everything she felt into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. I love you, Elena said. I know it is fast. I know it is crazy. But I love you, Jonathan Ashford. I love you too, Jonathan replied, the words coming easily, naturally, more than I thought possible. They held each other as the city lights glowed around them. Two people from different worlds who had found something precious together. They both knew challenges lay ahead. Jonathan's family still did not know about their relationship. Elena's demanding work schedule and family responsibilities would continue to complicate things. The business world would keep judging, keep questioning, keep waiting for them to fail. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had each other, and they had love. And that was enough to face whatever came next. The fallout from Jonathan's decision came swiftly. Within days, his mother, Camilla, requested an urgent family meeting at the Ashford estate. Jonathan knew what was coming, but he went anyway, with Elena by his side. He had asked her to come, wanting his family to meet the woman he loved, hoping they might see what he saw in her. The Ashford estate was intimidating. A sprawling mansion in the suburbs with manicured gardens and architecture that screamed old money. Elena's hand tightened on Jonathan's as they approached the front door. You do not have to do this, Jonathan murmured. I can handle them alone. We are in this together, Elena reminded him. Remember. Inside, the entire Ashford family was assembled. Camilla sat in her usual high-backed chair like a queen holding court. Jonathan's father, Raymond Ashford, stood by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. His brother Pierce lounged on the sofa, looking smug. Jonathan, Camilla said coldly, her eyes sliding over Elena with barely concealed disdain. You brought a guest. This is Elena Clark, Jonathan said firmly. The woman I love. Elena, these are my parents, Camilla and Raymond, and my brother Pierce. It is nice to meet you, Elena said politely, though Jonathan could hear the slight tremor in her voice. Camilla did not offer her hand. Miss Clark, I understand you work at the Meridian. I do, Elena confirmed, lifting her chin. I am a server there while I save money for culinary school. How industrious, Camilla said in a tone that suggested the opposite. Jonathan, might I speak with you privately? Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Elena, Jonathan replied. Camilla's lips pressed into a thin line. Very well. We heard about the Westbrook deal. You turned down $100 million for this relationship. I did, Jonathan confirmed. Have you lost your mind? Pierce interjected. Do you know what that investment could have done for the company? For all of us. I know exactly what it would have done, Jonathan said calmly. It would have made us richer. It also would have required me to end my relationship with the woman I love. I was not willing to do that. Because she has gotten her hooks into you, Pierce sneered. Come on, Jonathan. A waitress and a millionaire. It is obvious what she wants. Elena stiffened beside Jonathan, but before she could respond, Jonathan's voice cut through the room like ice. Finish that thought, Pierce. And you and I are done permanently. The threat in Jonathan's voice was unmistakable. Pierce actually flinched. We are just concerned, Camilla said, though her tone remained cold. You have been through so much since the accident. You are vulnerable, Jonathan. And people take advantage of vulnerable, wealthy men all the time. I am not vulnerable, Jonathan said firmly. I am capable of making my own decisions. And I chose Elena because she is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and treats me like a complete person, not like a disability in a wheelchair. If she truly cared about you, Camilla said, turning to Elena directly, she would understand that your future is more important than her feelings. A woman who loved you would want what is best for you, which includes financial security and appropriate social connections. Elena had been silent up to this point, but now she spoke, her voice steady despite the obvious hostility in the room. Mrs. Ashford, with all due respect, you do not get to define what love means. I did not ask Jonathan to turn down that investment. When he told me about it, I told him I would understand if he needed to prioritize his business. He made that choice himself, because he believes some things are more important than money. And if you cannot see that, if you truly think your son's worth is measured only by his bank account and social status, then you do not know him at all. The room fell silent. Camilla's face flushed with anger. How dare you speak to me that way in my own home? Camilla hissed. I am speaking the truth, Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. Your son is brilliant, compassionate, and brave. He has built an incredible company while dealing with challenges most people could not imagine. He deserves to be loved for who he is, not for what he can provide or what image he projects. And if you spent less time trying to control his life and more time actually seeing him, you might realize how extraordinary he truly is. Raymond Ashford, who had been silent until now, spoke for the first time. Jonathan, is this truly what you want? This relationship, regardless of the consequences? Jonathan took Elena's hand and faced his father squarely. Yes, Elena is what I want. A future with her is what I want. And if that means losing business deals or disappointing this family, then so be it. Because for the first time in 7 years, I feel complete. I feel seen and valued for who I am. Not pitted, not managed, not treated like I am broken. Elena did that. She gave me that gift. And I am not walking away from it for anything. Then you will marry her, Raymond said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Even Camilla looked shocked. What? Pierce sputtered. If Jonathan loves this woman enough to sacrifice business opportunities, enough to defy this family, Then he should marry her, Raymond continued. Make it official. Show us all this is real and not just rebellion against our expectations. Jonathan looked at Elena, whose eyes had gone wide. This was not how he had planned to propose, not even close. But as he looked at her, saw the love and support shining in her eyes despite the hostility surrounding them, he knew his father was right. He maneuvered his wheelchair to face Elena directly, taking both her hands in his. Elena Clark, he said, his voice filled with emotion. This is not the romantic proposal you deserve. There are no candles or rose petals or carefully planned speeches. But the truth is simple. I love you. I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce loyalty to the people you care about. I love how you see the best in people, how you fight for what is right, how you make me want to be better. You changed my life the moment you sat down at my table and refused to let me believe I deserved that humiliation. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice. Will you marry me? Tears were streaming down Elena's face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Jonathan. 1,000 times, yes. They kissed right there in the Ashford family living room, ignoring the shocked silence around them. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. Camilla stood abruptly and left the room without a word. Pierce followed her, shaking his head in disgust. But Raymond remained, studying them both with an expression that was difficult to read. Elena, Raymond said finally, you defended my son with passion and spoke truths that were difficult to hear. I do not approve of how quickly this has happened. I do not understand it. But I can see Jonathan is happy in a way I have not seen since before the accident. So, you have my cautious blessing. Do not make me regret it. I will spend every day proving I am worthy of him, Elena promised. See that you do, Raymond replied. Then, surprisingly, he approached Jonathan and placed a hand on his shoulder. You are braver than I gave you credit for, son. Your mother will come around eventually. She always does. And if she does not, well, it is your life to live. After Raymond left, Jonathan and Elena sat together in the empty living room, processing what had just happened. Did we really just get engaged in the middle of a family confrontation? Elena asked with a slightly hysterical laugh. We absolutely did, Jonathan confirmed. And I do not regret a single second of it, though I promise to give you a proper proposal later, with a ring and romance and everything you deserve. I do not need anything fancy, Elena said, curling against his side. I just need you. Over the following weeks, their lives transformed. Elena gave notice at the Meridian, and with a proper business loan from Jonathan's company, with interest rates and a formal contract that she insisted upon, she enrolled in culinary school while beginning plans for her bistro. Jonathan found new investors who cared more about innovation than social politics, people who appreciated that a CEO with strong personal values was an asset, not a liability. Sophie adored Jonathan from their first meeting. The young woman with cerebral palsy saw past his wheelchair instantly, engaging him in enthusiastic discussions about her favorite television shows and asking his opinion on everything from music to art. Watching Jonathan with Sophie, seeing the patience and genuine interest he showed, Elena fell even more deeply in love with him. Jonathan's relationship with his family improved slowly. Raymond began having weekly lunches with Jonathan and Elena, getting to know her beyond his initial prejudices. He was impressed by her business plan for the bistro, offering advice from his own business experience. Pierce remained distant and disapproving, but his opinion mattered less as time went on. Camilla was the holdout. For months, she refused to acknowledge the engagement, would not speak to Elena, and made her disapproval known at every opportunity. But Jonathan held firm, making it clear that Elena was now a permanent part of his life, and Camilla could either accept it or miss out on his life entirely. 6 months after the proposal, Jonathan and Elena stood in front of a historic but abandoned building in downtown Chicago. It was 4 stories of beautiful architecture that had been left to decay, high ceilings, original woodwork, and enormous potential. What do you think? Jonathan asked Elena. I think it is beautiful and probably way beyond what we can afford, Elena replied practically. What if I told you I already bought it? Jonathan said with a grin. In both our names. Equal ownership. Elena's eyes went wide. Jonathan, you did not. I have a vision. The ground floor becomes Sophie's kitchen, your bistro. But the upper floors become something bigger. A community center focused on helping people with disabilities find employment, develop skills, build careers. We create programs for job training, for advocacy, for connection. We build something that changes lives. Elena stared at the building, then at Jonathan, tears filling her eyes. You want to name my bistro after Sophie? She is part of why we met, Jonathan said simply. She taught you to see people's worth beyond their physical limitations. That lesson brought you into my life. It seems only fitting to honor her. Elena threw her arms around him, overcome with emotion. I love you so much. I love you, too, Jonathan murmured against her hair. Now, there is one more thing. He pulled away from her and, with careful movements, transferred from his wheelchair to kneel on the ground. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. I promised you a proper proposal, he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning but elegant diamond ring. Elena Clark, you walked into my life on one of my worst days and transformed everything. You saw past my wheelchair to the man underneath. You fought for me when I could not fight for myself. You loved me without conditions or expectations. You made me believe in fairy tales again. Will you marry me properly this time, with a ring and romance and all the words I want to say? Yes, Elena sobbed, laughing through tears. Yes, of course. Yes. Jonathan slipped the ring onto her finger, and she helped him back into his chair before kissing him deeply. They held each other in front of their building, the place that would become their legacy, their contribution to making the world better. The wedding took place 8 months later in the garden of a small venue overlooking Lake Michigan. It was intimate, only close friends and family. Sophie was Elena's maid of honor, radiant in her joy. Raymond walked Elena down the aisle after her own father remained absent, the older man, having gradually come to respect and even admire her strength. Camilla attended, sitting stiffly in the front row. But when Jonathan and Elena exchanged vows, speaking of love that sees beyond limitations and chooses compassion over judgment, Camilla quietly wiped away tears. After the ceremony, she approached Elena. You make my son happy, Camilla said simply. I was wrong to oppose this. I thought I was protecting him, but I was only limiting him. Thank you for seeing what I could not. Thank you for coming, Elena replied graciously, offering her mother-in-law an olive branch they both knew represented a new beginning. The reception was filled with laughter and dancing. Jonathan had worked with the venue to ensure everything was accessible, and he danced with Elena despite his wheelchair, the two of them moving together in perfect harmony while their loved ones celebrated around them. Sophie gave a toast that left everyone in tears, speaking about how Elena had always been her hero and now Jonathan was too, because they showed her that love was about seeing people's hearts, not their bodies. 3 years later, Jonathan and Elena stood in the fully renovated building that had become the heart of their shared mission. The ground floor bistro, Sophie's Kitchen, was thriving, known throughout Chicago for its innovative menu and warm atmosphere. More importantly, it employed several people with disabilities, offering them fair wages and opportunities they struggled to find elsewhere. The upper floors housed the Ashford Clark Foundation, a non-profit that had helped hundreds of people with disabilities find meaningful employment. They offered job training, resume workshops, interview preparation, and connections with employers who valued ability over appearance. The foundation also ran support groups, advocacy programs, and had become a respected voice in disability rights. Elena's culinary school degree hung on the wall of the bistro next to photos of her staff and family. Jonathan split his time between Ashford Technologies, which had grown successfully without Westbrook's investment, and the foundation work that had become his true passion. Sophie worked part-time at the bistro, greeting customers with her infectious smile, proving every day that disability did not mean inability. She had become the unofficial mascot of their mission, her joy and determination inspiring everyone who met her. One evening, as they closed the bistro together, Elena found Jonathan sitting in the empty dining room, looking around with a contented expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sliding into his lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. "I am thinking about that night," Jonathan said, "when Valerie walked out and I sat there feeling worthless. I am thinking about how you appeared like some avenging angel and refused to let me believe I deserved that treatment. I am thinking about how one moment of courage from you changed absolutely everything. I am thinking about how one moment of seeing someone's true worth changed my life, too," Elena replied. "You taught me that love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone perfect for you. Are you happy?" Jonathan asked, needing to hear the answer. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Elena said honestly. We built something beautiful, Jonathan. Not just this place, not just our businesses. We built a life that matters, a life that helps people, a life filled with real love, more than most people ever get. Jonathan kissed her softly. I love you, Elena Ashford. I love you, too, she whispered back. Outside, the Chicago skyline glittered with possibility. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds held each other close, grateful for every challenge they had overcome, every barrier they had broken, every person who had doubted them and been proven wrong. Because they had learned the most important truth of all, that real love sees beyond appearances, beyond social status, beyond physical limitations. Real love sees the heart, values the soul, and chooses connection over convention every single time. And that kind of love, they had proven, could change everything. Thank you for listening. Every good story needs a pair of attentive ears. If you'd like to let this spark of connection continue to grow, please give us a like, share this with others, and hit that subscribe button. Next time, we'll tell